James, all rights reserved, 2008, 2023. She, Iran, ceases from being an empire. As threats against the nations of the world were sealed up and tossed into the boundary-defying sea. The Orangish red nuclear blast seemed to have light and speed divine new colors from the palette of earthen elements rearranged, from beneath and surrounding in several stages and all at once viciously flowering and collapsing simultaneously away from and into its exploding nucleus with blossoming mass and mind-reeling force with umbrellic collapsing up there reminding of a composite image of insurrection against very conventional laws of physics. First Damascus, whose chief product was terrorism, that's harboring knew the enactors powered by Iran. Her time of proxy war hosting had hither and forthwith alongside her assaulting countries met with a catastrophic and just end. A strange haphazarding in a man-made disaster as heated sky met with assailed ground as scorched earth attested, and that was reflected above in various ways with both helio-particular charged obliteration and shrooming cloud breath of an overlay of impetus sworn to disclose a perpetuity clause impervious to constraining dimensions corralling height and depth of obliterated horizon. Competing yet sustained and elongated physics-defying implosions that's buckling and ravenous and reinvigorated mass oddly both imploded and on a rocking convulsion exploded, an invisible organ helplessly reacting like some tenuous vacuum suck siphoning and reverse mode strickening exhale releasing with wicked force into fiendish pyrotechnic that similarly seemed to rock outward in some airborne boundary of haze set ablaze on the back of the storming breakaway steed named Fury. That's until what reeled along persons demand to in I hold her steady and within imagined scene pictograph and framery in what could no longer in the same manner arrest the mind to so distort the perception of a sustaining. A sustaining within fathomable dimension evenly choreographed only where 1001 throat-constricting apprehensions, from the decibel shattering a peaceless mayhem leading to defiant control of centralized audio booms fracturing barriers mega-shorn tapestry where all sounds had verily been squelched into deaf tones, these prevailed. 'Twas both actual and in what the mind grappling for a sense of elusive resolve prematurely demanded, the sense was. Intercompartmentalized chambers of only what the human mind could name with distinction and attribute semblance of an idea to regarding what exactly sourced her into silhouetted consisting and genesis of colossal havoc wreaked proportionality. The targeted under the chasing bursting elements unchased exempted by a sort of grace, demanded few, daily to have the convenience to marvel over what constitutes creation just to in a nanosecond see her capsizing emblazon antithesis that's accomplishment was both the easiest and most complicated thing to fathom. The final strike as a polemic against freedom's oppressors breathing a last breath that's wheezing utterance was unshorn and boundalalas. Still there were the hopeful prophesies of return and restoration about this very land and her inhabitants who ironically would first know and exilling as though down to the letter copying the traits seen within the legacies of the Judah tribe people. Consulting with the prophet Jeremiah toward a time proceeding whence shall God's name be one in all the universe. Grim was the weather forecast today and the inception of fathomable plausibility effect on persons mindlessly touching their arms, legs and faces beyond the day wouldn't fully formulate in the mind's front-load faculty of brain until after accosting consciousness could flower into bloom what could perilously impale grisly apprehension. And there was that preceding overhead warning countdown blast whereby Iraqi and Iranian citizens still had time to begin their revolts in retreat form from some area 1,500 miles circumferentially away from the declared targeting ground. The next emission set with USA, Israeli, and NATO air forces in immediate airspace advantaging not coincidentally on the top overhead perspective view as pilots witness from their scrambling jets 3/4 point topped off with fuel, it would and did have 10 times the quantum force. The time of diplomacy on some predetermined scale measuring natural response and unreasonable resolve either expired or inconsequential now as China's goodwill and destabilizing peace notion was only on verbal lines of agreement located on parchment only where dignified as necessary refused to the bless of a world that largely still thought of annihilation ethnocide warfare as unconscionable. Especially where the greatest assault was meant as a civilization decimating animus that's explicitly stated goal was genocide of an entire people and her supporters. Supply lines facilitating the free flow of liquid black gold from the various nations in the controlling will of a vindicating army of people now in the open channels of disrupted commerce was as sure as were grim prophecies against cities of ancient notoriety. An easy answer finding the man when asking if 'twas God or the assaulted and defending Israel who did it. Did what? Ended the radicalized Islamic Republic of Iran and her despotism who were dead set determined on an annihilation solution, so-called. Nasser Abu Madar Hussein's vehicle of choice. The answer was televised as an emphatic yes to both questions. JoJo Dancer and Team America factoring in as in the monstrous cloud trail where only leading the towering infernos gaseous reach their MiG jets, tails climbing and accelerating and in intervals impossible quick repeating the steepest descent that seemed mechanically possible as. Again right there on satellite and cable transmission. The birds who'd ever thrust high and unscathed by remotest impact with it seemed to be the birth of her impregnated release. Jettisoning on hyper-thrust finding higher elevation on the same thrust and then impossibly skyward nose pointing into the steepest vertical plane possible. Majestic displays of modern-day tech in the military sectors as the Super Sleuth version of the B-52 bomber released weighty regime-decimating payload. Up and like rockets moonward taking before they in a terrific reverse around circle with absurd confidence looped over top of the kill zone. Long ago the Mideast terrain under a new sheriff until Russia, Turkey, Iran and friends displayed most dramatically the matter that was their exception taking. If only that were the conclusion to our wartime narrative, friends. If only. Truth is Iran's command central. It was like its nefarious nuke program diffused and quick rendered incontrovertibly decentralized, whereas Gog and Magog and their allied forces, many were compromised of those battalions making their way for it still, the prize of prizes in the Holy Land, Yerushalayim.
Eli James, all rights reserved. You're listening to 2023, and today's date would be the 10th of November, 2024. Stay tuned. I'm bringing 70 out to you in paperback, ebook, audiobook, and hardcover very soon.